Okay, I think I lost them. What are you doing? You can't do cardio without lifting weights. You're crazy! What? No, Arnold, I'm running from those new book ads. What are you talking about? Books don't have ads. No, not normally, but wait, hang on a second. Gollum, Schmeagol, are you reading a book?
Yeah, we like the pictures.
Okay, just put it down before... I'll be taking that.
Give us back, this is our book.
Billy Flay's here, and I've got a question for you. Are you looking for the precious?
He knows where it is. Tells us where to find the precious.
No, we don't want whatever you're selling. Get out of here. Skip ad. Well, all right, see you soon. Really? He couldn't go out the same window? Bradley, hi, what's going on? I'm trying to read the new chapter of The Order of the Pawn. Oh, Finton, maybe you should wait on that. Why? Wait, does something bad happen to me? Listen, I can't get into that right now. I restacked a note this week on Substack about ads in books, and I made a joke about it. But now this company called Shamazon is trying to force ads into books by sending spokespeople to hunt down anyone who's reading. My, that sounds needlessly complicated. Couldn't they just put ads on the ebooks and call it a day? Finton, don't give them ideas! You know what, fine. I'm gonna go back to reading. No, Finton, wait! I'm gonna have to replace every window in this house by the time this episode's over. What is the meaning of this? Give me back my copy of The Order of the Pawn this instant! Hey there! Billy stays here! Can I ask you a question? Oh, fine, I don't see why not, now that you've taken my book. Finton, he's trying to sell you something. The question's meant to disarm you. Well, I know that. Now... Are you tired of that one guy writing all the Devine tales? You know, now that you mention it, I am, yes. No, we don't want any. Skip ad. Whoops, you only get one skip ad per day on the basic plan. Wait, there's plans now? Oh, this is getting out of control. You know what? That's it. I'm going back to writing. What is it now? Hey there! Billy Pays here, and I've got a question for you. Do you want paid sponsorships on the Saved as Draft podcast? No, Billy Pays, Hey, wait a second. Did you say paid sponsorships? Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 43 of the Saved as Draft podcast. We're back to our normal segments this week, including a brand new guest interview with my dear friend Wajiha Nadeem. Wajiha has been through a lot this year, including a battle with breast cancer, but she's recently been given a clean bill of health, so I asked her to come onto the show and tell us about her journey both as a writer and now as a cancer survivor. Before we get into our shoutouts, I've got a couple quick announcements as well. For starters, Luna Astley Kolsu's husband, Victor Uslu, joined Substack this past week, and if you don't already know about how cool this guy is, well, you've come to the right place. Not only is he an artist, but he looks like a Viking, and I've said on more than one occasion in the notes that I would follow him into battle without a second thought, and I do mean that. If that sounds like the kind of person you want to be subscribed to, I don't blame you. I'll drop a link to his profile in the show notes. Let's all give him a warm welcome. I love seeing new artists and writers in the community. My second announcement this week is that friend of the show, Tim Yagodzinski, is running a giveaway. He's offering 5 physical copies of his poetry chapbook in some beautiful binding, and you can enter simply by leaving a comment on his post with a link to your favorite poem. Nice and easy. The giveaway is running until the end of November, so head on over to the link in the show notes and drop your comment in the post. Okay, that's it for my housekeeping this week. Let's dive into this week's shoutouts right after a quick message from this week's sponsor, who may seem kind of familiar. Today's episode of the Saved as Draft podcast is sponsored by Shamazon's new service, TBR Picks. Oh, don't look at me like that. I needed the money, okay? Just hear them out.
Hi there, I'm Jane Benzos, CEO and founder of Shamazon. You may have recently heard about our new book ads program that's been sweeping the nation.
Hey there, Billy Clay's here.
Override Alpha 35 Zulu.
Whoa! My apologies, Miss Benzos.
It's quite all right, Billy. Run along now. We've been listening to your feedback, and we hear you. We don't care what you're saying, but we do hear you. We've decided to adjust our advertising program to benefit readers and writers. Introducing TBR Picks. TBR Picks tailors your book ads to show you other books you wish you had time to read. With compelling pitches and exciting excerpts, TBR Picks will ensure that you keep buying more books than you could ever hope to finish. So please look forward to your very own personalized TBR Picks the next time you decide to read a book. TBR Picks, because your reading list is looking a little light, isn't it?
All right, and we're back. So we'll start with 3 shout-outs for stories submitted to Jennifer Jorgensen's ongoing event, The Unquiet World. You can learn more about that event at the link in the show notes. After that, I'll feature our 5 randomly selected stories from my weekly shout-outs thread in my subscriber chat. Remember, every Tuesday you can share your links in my subscriber chat for a chance to be featured here or on Mina Howell's Penny Dreadfuls podcast. It's worth submitting every week so you can boost your chances of getting on the show. Okay, let's start with our 3 Unquiet World stories for that event. First up is A House with Character by Verdant Butterfly. This one is a hilarious take on the Unquiet World's premise of a world inhabited by spirits from across history. We get this amazing overview of someone trapped in a house with all manner of spirits, only for the story to pivot into a listing for said home that has a bunch of hilarious selling points. Here's an excerpt that I liked. Looking for a home with soul? This charming multi-era residence offers over 1,000 years of history, all currently in residence. Perfect for buyers who don't mind the occasional Roman war cry at 3 a.m. or the faint scent of medieval incense wafting from the loo. Features include 4 bedrooms, technically 12 if you can count spectral overlap, 2 baths, one of which is constantly occupied, original Tudor beams, frequently polished by invisible hands, ambient Gregorian chanting, no speaker system required, built on an ancient burial ground, great bones. Make sure to check this out in the show notes. It's a fantastic addition to Jennifer's shared world that she's building. Our second Unquiet World shoutout this week is They Remembered the Way Home by Mary Ellen Brady. Now, one thing I love about this piece is how it incorporates a real language called, and I apologize if I pronounce this wrong, Loose Hootseed, which is a Coast Salish language historically spoken by tribes in the Puget Sound region of Washington state, from Olympia to the Skagit Valley. It has apparently, in real life, been at risk of going extinct, so new efforts have been made to ensure that it's not lost to the world. Mary Ellen's story serves to benefit that work, and it's another example of why I love everything she writes. The story centers around salmon fishing, and how recent events have led to the number of fish dwindling. The spirits of these departed people who've come back know what is wrong, and they're trying to make the modern people listen. It's a powerful example of how the old ways are sometimes lost to time, and how our new problems can be solved by remembering how things used to work before time and technology complicated everything. Here's an excerpt I enjoyed. You want me to tell her we can't save the salmon? Her voice cracked. That we know we destroyed her home? We know the fish are dying? We know she's trying to help, but you chose not to listen? There isn't a word in Loose Hootseed for that kind of cruelty. They didn't have a word for people who would watch their home die and do nothing. Silence. The grandmother was there. She started attending meetings, standing quietly in the back. Now she spoke. Margaret translated through tears. She says she understands now. The water isn't the only thing that's sick. She says she wants to help anyway, because that's what you do when something is dying. You try to heal it. Amazing work. I highly recommend that one from Mary Ellen Brady. Amazing. All right, and our third Unquiet World shoutout this week is The Last Fräulein by Aurelian Ashmore. This story is about a Jewish girl who comes face to face with the ghost of a Nazi soldier. As you can imagine, the premise leads to some pretty intense dialogue. I feel like Aurelian handled it really well, though. The way our Jewish character, Matilda, is given the chance to confront the hate and cruelty of the Nazi regime from World War II is powerful. She tears apart the spirit's entire worldview by revealing how they lost the war, how the world changed, and so on. I also really liked how Aurelian used italics for all the dialogue here. It gave the words a sort of ethereal feel that matched the premise of the story really well. Here's an excerpt. Aide stood pale in the living room. On the other side of the room stood a soldier holding a gun. Black rider's boots, skull on his uniform. Aide trembled, his hands raised. Matilda could see his breath. Rat. The soldier pulled the trigger. The bullet hit Aide in the chest, and he fell like a stone. No blood, but the room froze. Matilda's nostrils burned in the dry cold. Even her breath refused to show. She heard herself scream. Legs didn't move. Aide's face, eyes open, emotionless. Staring at the ceiling, she forced herself forward, touched him. His cold hands, his blue lips. Was he dead? He was alive and warm just a few minutes ago. His eyes shifted, but they didn't see. Amazing work from authors writing for the Unquiet World this week. I love all these entries. And now, let's move on to our 5 stories randomly selected from my weekly shoutouts thread. First up for our weekly shoutouts is Talia the Tyrant by Richard Loader. This was a fun and action-packed story that reminded me a bit of Mad Max meets Horizon Zero Dawn, if you've ever played any of those games. It tells the story of Talia, a ruthless leader who commands an entire fleet of fighters, and it's set on a desert world that has been ravaged by conflict and industry. It's a really great setting, and the story throws us right into the action as well. Talia's character in particular immediately exudes pure badass energy, and I really enjoyed how her almost nonchalant ruthlessness came through in both her actions and dialogue. Here's an excerpt that I enjoyed. As the Sky Flotilla snaked its way through the air, the various crews inspected and prepared the weapons platforms on their vessels. Flamers, harpoons, and many other types were loaded, calibrated, and mounted by runts who were eager to shoot at something. The upper echelons of warriors relished boarding and fighting hand to hand, but the smaller clan members were forbidden from doing so as they were deemed too weak for the glory of combat. The runts were left operating the ships and were allowed to use what little ranged weapons there were. They made no complaints. This role offered them safety where the only other alternative would be to attempt survival in the wasteland, which undoubtedly would be a fool's errand. Excellent. Really great work from Richard there. And apparently part of his connected universe I learned as well. Fantastic. Our second shout out this week is Negative Feedback. Here's How to Handle It by Wild K Nebula. Now, I loved this article, and I was really happy when it came up in my random selections this week because I think, honestly, every writer should read this piece. It's about how Nebula, or Nebby to her friends, recently received some feedback that wasn't particularly constructive or helpful. It also came from a beta reader, which means we're not talking about a short story that you can fix real quick. She was rightfully hurt by the needlessly cruel feedback, but instead of letting it crush her, she instead turned the experience into an article about how to deal with this kind of stuff as a writer. As writers, it's inevitable that we're going to get feedback that isn't meant to help us grow. It's those times when you'll be tempted to believe every word that they tell you. Imposter syndrome will try to reinforce everything they're saying, but Nebby's article here gives us tried and true tips on how to stop that from happening. Remember, feedback from anyone, regardless of who they are, is just their opinion. It doesn't invalidate you or your art. Here's an excerpt from the article. They weren't wrong, but that doesn't make them right. I cried for days, until eventually I became angry. This piece is my recovery piece. I have not been able to write or edit any of my work since having read that email. Like a caterpillar, I went into a protective chrysalis. I stayed there for several days, unsure of what to do or where to go. Here's what I found in the silence. Number 1, I am a highly sensitive individual. Number 2, I have given the opinions of others power over my confidence one too many times. And number 3, cruelty destroys what's meant to shine if you let it. I learned in the resting period of my journey what matters to me as a creative. I never want to lose my spark because that's what makes me beautiful. I decided that after I had processed the emotions, it was time for me to step up and protect myself. Beautifully said, Nebby, and honestly, like I said, an article that every writer should read. I loved it. Loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it, loved it. All right, our third shout out this week is Substack Burns You Out While Pretending to Be Your Mate by Suswati Basu. This is one of Suswati's most popular articles, so I was really excited for the chance to check it out and talk about it here. In the piece, Suswati talks about burnout and how, despite being different in some ways from other social media platforms, Substack is still social media at the end of the day. Its algorithm rewards capital C content, and participation in things like notes is practically required if you want to stay relevant. And she's right. It's a recipe for burnout, and it's tough because as creatives, we can't just switch on the inspiration. I myself have struggled with burnout in every aspect of my life, and yes, including here on Substack as well. That being said, I have found a rhythm and a pace that works for me, with more changes to come as they're needed. I'm fully aware of how a place like this can burn me out, so I'm always looking for ways to ensure it's not draining me more than it needs to. Now, if we talk about the events of the last week, that all goes out the window, but I'm not about to derail the whole episode with a tangent. The point is that Suswati brings up a really good point in this article, and I agree with her that for a lot of people, the best approach is to just show up when you want and post when you want, stats and algorithm be damned. I think that's where I've settled, podcast and weekly posts aside, those are always on a schedule, but here's an excerpt from Suswati's piece. That term, content creators, makes most creatives instinctively cringe. It strips the art out of artistry and turns us into button-pressing monkeys chasing the algorithmic machine. On the one hand, you get instant exposure and you can chat directly with people, not needing to rely on traditional publishers who have their own agendas and quotas, finally giving us marginalized folks a chance to shine. On the other, you become part of this abstract tech mechanism that's stealing from us, ruining our concentration, and giving us constant anxiety. Our choices are still limited, but are now presented in a fancier box. Like any social platform, Substack is designed to reward instant gratification. A ping here, a like there, and suddenly you want more. Soon you're comparing your writing to someone else's output or their life to your own. Before long, the constant influx of posts, notes, comments, and notifications becomes cognitive clutter, and exhaustion is dressed up as engagement. I really can't argue with any of that. She's absolutely right, and it's something to be aware of. It's something to be aware of for sure. Fourth this week is The Moon Talker by Martin Grace. So Martin's publication is dedicated to a debut science fiction novel that is being serialized here on Substack. It's a story about a world destroyed by climate change and nuclear war. It stars a character named Harper, a brilliant yet troubled engineer who leads a mission to mine the moon and save the Earth, until she discovers a subterranean sentient super being who will be killed if her work continues. That right there sets up some really interesting stakes. I read the prologue for this week's shoutout, and I'm really enjoying it so far. The world building is nice. It's also organic and woven into the story itself instead of being on its own as exposition that could slow down the pacing. The dialogue is great as well. It offers some unique voices in the way characters speak, and it sets up this whole moon mission story nicely. So I'm really intrigued about that sentient being, though, mentioned in the summary, and it makes me want to keep reading. Here's an excerpt from the prologue. The scorching outback heat hits me, and any bare skin roasts. My legs are still numb and wobbly as I stand. The feeling will return, Harper. Get on with it. I cover up with heavy-duty gloves and shawls. The carbon stench of burning life seeps through my respirator filters. I don't know which direction to flee until I see the fire twisters approaching and hear the roar of their rushing, scorching winds. The day has fully broken now, and the rusty black permacloud casts its crimson-filtered light across the desert. Highway 94 is desolate. Not a living soul is here to help or hear my calls. No birds of prey hunt these toxic skies. No reptiles scuttle across this barren earth. Only the shadows of plant life remains in this vast graveyard of charcoaled emu bushes. The burnt-out husks of once proud gum trees still stand, awaiting the fire to end all fires, to level everything to ash. And it's coming for them. It's coming soon. Love it, love it. The stakes are just amazing. And like I said, it sets up the world really nicely. Our fifth shout-out this week is The Workplace is Not Enough by Amy Evans. This piece is a response to a New York Times article called Did Women Ruin the Workplace? And let me tell you, I am here for the energy in this article. From the first sentence, it reads, Ever since I was a little girl, I knew I wanted to be a ruiner. So this article is satirical, and it takes aim at the New York Times piece with ruthless intent. It frames things like, a non-toxic workplace or, good health insurance or maybe even remote work options and salaries you can live on as things that are, quote-unquote, ruining the workplace. It's a bitingly sarcastic article, but it does exactly what the New York Times article was doing. It tries to frame things that are good, fair, and reasonable as these horrible things, and so Amy's piece just embraces that and calls herself and her fellow allies ruiners as a result to play into that. Honestly, I'm a big fan of satirical articles like this because, honestly, if the New York Times are going to be idiots and spout nonsense, then we might as well speak their language while getting our point across. And the article had a poll at the end. It was unfortunately closed, but if I could vote, Amy, I would have voted for the option that said, I am a ruiner ally, and I accept. Here's an excerpt. In the years since 2018, I can confidently say I've only improved my ruining skills. I'm now working every day to demand that workplaces do outrageous things, like pronounce people's names correctly, not make assumptions about their personal lives, and give them an option to work remotely. I personally have forced HR departments across the globe to spend dozens of minutes per year explaining that harassment is bad, actually. Minutes that could have been spent on masculine virtues like quarterly earnings or cigars with the boys. Thus, it's with immense pride that I accept the formal acknowledgement of the New York Times as the actual reason the workplace sucks so incredibly hard these days. I love it. An amazing selection of stories, articles, and some personal essays this week. Big thank you to everyone who submitted links, and remember to check every Tuesday in my subscriber chat for a new shoutouts thread so you can be featured right here on the show. Next up is a look at our power-up prompt stories from this week, right after a quick mindful moment. Hey there. This is Chill Bradley. I've been on vacation the last week because things were definitely not chill for a while there. Even so, the storm has passed, and now it's time to rest. Here's a quote to consider. We write to taste life twice, in the moment and in retrospect. Anais Nin. We create fiction and poetry, but within each of these things is a kernel of truth, a piece of reality that inspired something entirely new. And for me, it's a combination of both positive and negative experiences. But everything I've been through has molded me into the writer I am today. All of it mattered. And everything you've been through has mattered too. Allow your stories to reflect who you are and how far you've come. Admire the progress you've made. And spend some time thinking about the path forward as well. Thanks for listening. Back to the show. All right, and we're back. For this week's power-up prompt, the genre was open, the character was the soldier, the setting was the war-torn world, and the conflict was seeking a truce. Now, it's no secret that this prompt was inspired by recent events. I wanted to explore worlds where peace could be accomplished, even if war was all the people of the world knew. Keep in mind, since I cover all power-up prompt submissions, these shoutouts will be a little shorter and won't include excerpts due to how many of them there are each week. Thank you for understanding. Now let's see what everyone came up with. First up is The War That Remembered Itself by Connor Mancuso. In this one, I love how Connor has a pitch for the story up top in the post. It sets the stage for us. This is a standalone piece about a soldier who crosses a place called the Valley of Teeth to broker a truce between two empires. In true Connor fashion, there's also a cosmic horror element here, with a god that both sides worship and a choice that our soldier character must make once it wakes. I really loved how Connor tied the entity into this story and to the prompt itself. The way he describes how it exists solely to feed on war and despair brings Connor's iconic epic poetry style to the forefront and makes for a beautiful read. He uses the format here to highlight segments of imagery that really stand out in the way that the piece is structured as well, which is something I've always seen and admired about his work. It's a haunting and beautiful piece. Our second power-up prompt story this week is Bandage White by E.J. Ritter. This is a short but extremely powerful story that illustrates just how fragile a concept peace can be. It sets things up with a unflinching look at the war being waged in this world. Then, it introduces the idea of peace, but it describes such a thing as obscene. Quote, like saying a ghost's name, which I really loved. The story rises toward a climactic moment where it seems like peace may actually be within reach, but in a single moment right after, it shatters. It makes for such a beautiful and haunting ending, and honestly, it's a world that I would love to revisit because EJ's world building in this piece is excellent. Number 3 this week is The Fight for Peace by Emma Steele. This is a poem, which I love to see for power prompts, and it's a beautiful examination of how war is easy, but peace is difficult. It offers up several perspectives, including how war looks through the eyes of a soldier. I really enjoyed how it hammers home the need for peace to be something that everyone wants equally. There's a metaphor in here about a rowboat that says it cannot move in a single direction safely if all the paddles are rowing in different directions. And that's exactly right, and a phenomenal metaphor for peace. It also ends on a powerful and crushingly sad note, saying that dreams of expanding to the stars will be left to the dead. And it's true. We're so busy fighting ourselves that our bigger aspirations as a species are dying out day by day. Amazing work. Love this one. Next up is A Bullet Stained Blue by Anton Anderson. This one is really great as well. It's set in a unique world where two factions are fighting at the behest of androids known as Titans. It also includes a haunting concept in the story about how women are used to birth new soldiers simply because there's not enough fighting men to maintain the war. So in this world, pregnant women are kept safe, but they work in factories, they train, they study theories of war. And this, of course, means that women have become experts at warfare from all the time they've spent doing this. And so when their children are born, many of them return to the front lines as leaders. And in this story, we follow Mark and Cynthia. And Cynthia in the story is a pregnant woman with her third child. It's a really fascinating concept for a war-torn world, and it's told with a lot of rich world building and really gritty imagery that perfectly fits the sci-fi narrative. It's a really good story. I highly recommend it. Make sure to check the show notes for a link to this and all of our other Power Up Brom stories this week. Next up is The Truce by Brenda, A Voice That Wonders. This is a beautiful story about a character named Sister Tomas, a woman whose origins and true name are unknown, but she quickly becomes a staple of the battlefield and is known to all the soldiers around her. The story centers around her suggesting to the soldiers one day that they should consider a truce. They, of course, think this is ridiculous, but Sister Tomas offers up amazing wisdom in her dialogue here. There's a line that gave me chills. At one point, she says, "You think peace is cowardice. It is harder than war." Incredible. A haunting piece with a lot to say about the cost of reaching said peace. Next up is Under the Witta Weaven by J.M. Gooding. And he did send me a pronunciation guide there, so I'm hoping I did it right. This is part of J.M.'s ongoing stories that combine folklore and historical warfare. I was really excited to read this one because it uses an actual Christmas truce that happened during World War I. It combines this with folklore about the Witta Weaven, which translates to white wives and often speaks about how they would tidy up battlefields, in this case using snow to cover the carnage. I love the way the folklore is woven into this piece. The whole story feels atmospheric and authentic, but the language hints at more supernatural elements regarding the snow in the battlefield itself. JM also shared his rules with me when it comes to writing these types of stories, and I thought it'd be cool to share those here so you can better understand how he blends history and folklore. So rule number 1 is the stories must not change historical outcomes. That means no alternate history or what-if scenarios. Rule number 2, supernatural events may influence specific local scale moments in the war, e.g. slowing in advance, but again, cannot change the overall outcome of the battles or the war itself. Rule number 3, folklore and mythological elements must stay true to core legends, though blending is allowed. And rule number 4, stories may include original supernatural elements inspired by folklore without being direct adaptations. Really amazing, and I think those rules are great if anyone wants to try their hand at this combination of genres. And hey, I'm going to check out other stories written by J.M. Gooding in this kind of hybrid genre because I always love his work. And I discovered this week in my conversation with him that he refers to himself as the great value Spencer D.W., which just goes to show you the off-brand version can be damn good as well. Next, we've got The Circuit by Jonathan Hogue. I love the pitch for this one in the story's subtitle. It reads, "A weary soldier risks everything for forbidden love and the chance to end a war that has lasted generations." I'm a big fan of this forbidden love kind of storyline in pieces like this. And here it doesn't take center stage, but it adds incredible depth to the world and characters. There's a moment early on where they're talking to each other, and the female character says a line that reads, "We don't belong here," and God, that hit me really hard. Jonathan did an amazing job with this story and quickly establishes both the world and the stakes. I was really pulled in as soon as I started reading, and the chemistry between the two main characters was also really believable. Now, am I living in this world? No, but I do see shades of our world in it, and for that reason, I gotta give this one the nod. It's one of my favorite stories this week. Next up is A Trellis Grown from Ashes by Leron Haywood. This story was also excellent. It's something where I've come to learn that Leron always brings their A game when it comes to my prompts. I know this from October as well. In this one, we join two characters who are seeking to meet up with their sworn enemies in an attempt to discuss peace. I love how this story hones in on the themes of hope and how it can push us to keep going when everything else feels impossible. I myself like to say that my stories are tempered with hope, and this story is a great example of how to do that right. Next up, we've got No Winter for Hungry Things by Asteria Geisterblum. I cannot recall the last time Asteria had a shout out on the podcast, but she's one of my favorite writers on Substack, and so I'm really excited for this chance to talk about one of our favorite ghosts stories. And I also believe this is Asteria's first power-up prompt story as well, which is amazing. The concept here is superb. We join an apothecary who prepares concoctions and blends for soldiers fighting in a war, but it becomes clear that our apothecary has seen plenty of things himself. Asteria approaches the story with a beautiful writing voice that feels poetic and almost melancholy in the best way possible. There's a sadness to the details in the story that I really, really enjoyed. The apothecary himself speaks and moves in ways that reveal more about him and what he's been through as well. Honestly, if you have yet to read Asteria's work, this story is a great place to start. A truly beautiful and haunting piece with exceptional atmosphere and immersion. Remember, check out the show notes for links to all of these. All right, and our last power-up prompt story this week is Anton's War by Gil Nobody. This story was amazing. It starts with a powerful set of opening paragraphs that showcases the cruelty and horrors of war, including mentions of chemical warfare, which is a topic you don't see discussed often, but it is extremely shocking and a part of historical warfare. The story builds out the world extremely well, highlighting strong characters before eventually taking us on a twist and perspective shift that is both shocking and incredibly well telegraphed. It was one of those moments where you think you know who you're reading about, what's going on, you think you know the scope and the scale, and then boom, you have to stop and kind of take a step back and be like, wait a second, were they really hinting at this the whole time? And in fact, they were. The shift also serves to further drive home the story's themes as well. It's a really unique piece, especially once you hit that twist, and it offers an incredible sense of perspective, and it leaves you with a chilling conclusion. Amazing work from all the authors this week in our Power Up Prompts segment. Stay tuned for the next Power Up prompt tomorrow, and as of this recording, the poll has sci-fi in the lead. So unless that changes, you can look forward to a sci-fi prompt for next week. All right, and next, we'll dive into this week's featured guest interview. This week, I'm very excited to welcome to the show a dear friend of mine who I met in my first weeks here on Substack back in January. She's been a beacon of light and positivity ever since I met her, so I knew I wanted to invite her onto the show as soon as I started doing interviews. However, earlier this year, she announced that she had been diagnosed with breast cancer. I, of course, reached out immediately to offer my support, and back then, I told her that when she beats this, not if, when she beats this, I would be honored to have her on the show to talk to us about her journey. She agreed, and folks, as of this writing, my dear friend is officially cancer-free, and once more, sharing her incredible art on Substack as well. So, it is with extreme happiness that I welcome to the show Wajiha Nadeem, so let's dive in and hear her story. All right, everybody, and this week on the Saved as Draft podcast, I'm extremely excited to welcome to the show one of the first friends I made on Substack. She is a writer and cancer survivor. Please welcome to the show Wajiha Nadeem. Wajiha, thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Bradley. I'm so excited to be here.
So let's start off by having you tell us just a little bit about yourself and your creative journey so far.
Okay, so basically, I'm fairly new to the world of Substack and newsletters. I started in January 2025, but I've been creating online for about 10 years. I started my food blog, I Need to Eat, back in 2015. My daughter was just like 1 year old at that point of time. And I used to test recipes in my tiny little kitchen with her, and I used to post those recipes online. But then, food blogging is a very, very competitive niche. So it was getting really hard to just keep going and going because everything was always changing and it was highly competitive. And it always seemed like it was an uphill battle. And the only reason I actually started food blogging was because I just needed an outlet for my writing. And at that point of time, I felt like this is something I could do. So, but eventually I got really, really burned out a couple of years ago and I just stopped blogging. And then around like late 2024, I discovered Substack and, it just felt like coming home because it was, a place just for writers. And I was like, hey, we can try this. And so that's how my publication Enchanted Letters came about. And that's, what I've been doing so far most of this year.
Okay, that's amazing. So prior to the food blog, did you write any kind of fiction or newsletter type stuff, or was food blogging kind of your first sort of major writing project?
Yes, for sure. It was like my first very public writing project. I've always been a writer all my life. And I actually remember telling my first story when I was just 5 years old. I told it to my dad. So, I've wanted to be a writer, a storyteller for a very, very long time. But I only actually started to put that in action when I started my food blog.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay. And you mentioned that the food blog scene is very competitive. So was it something where you had to like kind of post like really often, or how was it competitive in terms of the niche there?
Oh, okay. So it's basically one of the most competitive niches right now,
Hmm.
because a lot of people like to cook, and food is recipes is just very, very popular online.
Yeah.
So I joined the scene around 2015, and it was still like not very well known, like food websites and recipes. Like people didn't know that you could actually make an income from them.
Mm.
So, but it's really started developing around that time. I think when I joined, there were already quite successful food bloggers. They had like recipe websites with millions and millions of followers, and they were like doing really, really well. They were successful. They were getting like cookbook publishing deals and stuff like that. So, but the thing is, the more people learned how popular it was, the more people just kept coming, and then the competition just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then, to stand out became very difficult because my main traffic used to come through Google, so Google page views basically. And, they just wanted a very cookie cutter style that would show up in the Google search results. So for me, that was also one of the reasons because when I started food blogging, I would just, post stories regarding the recipes, and, it was my creative liberty. But then suddenly there were all these sort of rules that you had to follow to be able to be, to get recognition basically. And I didn't want to do that because every other recipe blog just started looking like each other. It was like cookie cutter websites. And to me, that was boring, and it felt like it was throttling my creativity. So I had to take a step back from that.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, prior to publishing my stuff on Substack, I also for a long time worked as a freelance writer, and I worked a lot in kind of search engine optimization. And it's exactly like you said, like there was a certain way you had to do it if you wanted to rank on Google search results and stuff like
Yes,
that.
yes,
That
yes,
makes a
for
lot of
sure.
sense. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So how did you actually find Substack? I know you joined. You said it was like late 2024, I think you said. But what how did you actually discover Substack as a website?
Yeah, so I actually found out about Substack through this Instagrammer that I used to follow, and she shared that she was starting a Substack newsletter. So I've been following her for many, many years, actually. So she has a publication on Substack, and I was like, I just downloaded the app, and I completely fell in love with Substack because it was just, it felt like it was just curated for writers and of
Hmm.
course readers, but it was finally like words over pictures and videos, because so much of the other social media is just images and reels and videos, and that's what gets the most eyeballs, and I get that. But for me, writing will always be my main source, or like you could say the way I communicate. I'm not very comfortable with posting videos or doing images all the time. For me, the most substantial thing is the words and writing itself. And finally, it seemed like, Substack is catering to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I felt the exact same way when I joined Substack. It's so funny
Yeah.
that you bring up like the pictures and videos because it's like over on Instagram, I don't even have 1,000 followers because it's just like I don't really know what to post as far as pictures and video
Yeah.
go, but I know how to write.
Yeah. Yeah. And I tried to dabble in before, actually, interestingly, before, sorry, I thought I should let you know this because it's but before Substack, I had just gotten so desperate and I wanted to have some sort of like writing outlet. I actually started an author TikTok because on TikTok, I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but the author talk hashtag is like really, really viral. So I was like, maybe, we could try that as well. But even that was really difficult for me because I'm like a camera shy person, generally speaking. So making those videos or those TikToks, they were like really uncomfortable for me. And I'd be like, pretending to write and showing my daily writing routine. And that just seemed so fake to me. And I was like, I can't do something that's not real. So I took a step back from that as well. And then, I found Substack.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. I have done some TikToks here and there, but I run into the same problem as you, where it's like, how do you post something that's actually authentic? Whereas like you said, a lot of people post videos of them like writing and stuff like that, which is fine, but that only works for so long, right? Before you're just basically
Yeah.
faking it.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I wholeheartedly agree as far as like Substack kind of being, a hub for writers and writing. Um, so when you first got to Substack, then your publication's called Enchanted Letters. What was kind of your thought process when you first got here and you set that up? What were some of your goals, and how has that evolved since you've been on Substack?
Um, yeah. So when I first started Substack, so I had this whole idea that I'll be sharing my journey of writing my first novel. And I had so many topics that I wanted to talk about, like motherhood and life in general, and like self-actualization. And I had all these lofty goals, and I was like, I'm gonna do this niche and target that niche, and I'm going to try to find readers of a certain lifestyle or something like that. But then I started my Substack in January 2025, and it did really well. Like, I got a lot of feedback that I was doing well, I was writing well. But then life happened, and I was diagnosed with breast cancer in late March.
Hmm.
So that was like a big setback for me. And I, of course, stopped writing for a while there because I felt like, what's the point? And of course, I was really busy with the diagnosis and then the surgery and then, the cancer treatment. So it took me, I had to take a step back. So I hadn't actually really posted a lot. I think I had only like 13 or 14 essays out by the time I was, diagnosed with cancer. So, to be honest, I feel like you need to really write a lot to find an actual niche. And it has also really evolved because I think, writing is so personal, and a lot of what goes on your life is reflected in what you write.
Hmm.
So my writing has definitely evolved in the sense that right now I'm mostly writing about resilience and growth and hope, because that is what my life is right now after post cancer treatment.
Hmm.
So and I feel like I had to put my novel on the side because there's just been no time to focus on that as well. I mean, the least I can do is just keep showing up on Substack. So uh, I would just say that you start with something very different, but you also like end up with something very different because life just happens.
Right. Yeah, I think you brought up a really good point about how life in general sort of informs our writing. Regardless of whether or not you write like, fiction, personal essays, what have you, your experiences are always going to inform your writing in significant ways, like you said.
Yes, absolutely.
So, how would you describe sort of your style when it comes to when it comes to writing? Like, I know I've seen you post like kind of personal essays, stuff about, especially recently, like you said, kind of hope, resilience, stuff like that. When you sit down to write something, what are some of the kind of themes and ideas that you tend to focus on in your style of writing?
Yeah, honestly, my writing is very spontaneous. So
Mm,
I'll be just sitting and a thought will, come across my mind, and I'll just grab that thought and then see where it takes me. So I do a lot of free writing, and I'll just try to experiment and see where the piece is taking me, and whatever feels right to me, I'll go on that path. So I can have a piece which will start off very differently, but then in the middle I'll have this inspiration, and I'll be like, okay, this is the piece, this is how I want to take it, this is the direction I want to take the piece in. So but what I try my best to do with, and I think it works, is to be as authentic as possible. So I know there's like a lot of talk around following a certain niche to be successful, and to just focus on certain things and you'll find success. But I don't think human beings are like that. I cannot box myself into a niche.
mhm.
So I would say that I write on a range of topics which keeps changing, but the main theme is to be as authentic and as relatable as possible.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think ultimately being authentic and being true to yourself is more important in the long term than
Yes.
having a niche, like you said. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
So, in your time on Substack, as you said, I've seen a lot of different kind of posts from you. What are some of your most, successful posts? And what did you kind of learn from the success of those posts?
Yeah, so I thought about this, and I have two posts that come to mind.
Hmm.
So there's this one that I did. I wrote it in October for Breast Cancer Awareness Month,
Hmm.
and it's called "I Will Bloom Once More." It's basically reflecting on my journey and on how I feel as a person after having gone through cancer and completing the treatment. And I feel like, I say it in the essay as well that I feel like a part of me died when they told me that it was breast cancer.
Hmm.
And it's like, so I basically used a metaphor to explain how I feel. So I felt like, orchids that very easily die because they're very hard to maintain. I
Right.
used to actually have orchids. And so I know how hard they are to take care of. And, it seemed like as a person that I had sort of, died, but then now I can feel myself blooming once more because I'm slowly coming back to normal life, as normal as it can get.
Hmm.
So that piece was very close to my heart. I think it's one of the strongest pieces I've written, even if I say so myself. And then I know I haven't really focused on this, but I also like to dabble in fiction from time to time. So there's this short story that I shared like many months ago. It's called The Bird in the Gold Cage, and it's about a bird named Tarane who's trapped by a queen because of her beautiful singing. And I just think that is also a really, nice story that I wrote.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe I'm familiar with both of those posts, and I really love that one of the posts that you mentioned was something very authentic and very true to yourself and your journey, and then the other one obviously was the fiction that you did, which I do remember that one, and I like that one a lot.
Yes, yes, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, now that I think yesterday you posted on Substack that you just had a new kind of checkup and a scan and everything's looking clear and clean, which is just I was so happy to hear that.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. And so now that as you said, your life's getting back on track, what are you kind of thinking as far as, the next, let's say the next year, we're heading into 2026. What are you thinking about as far as, getting back to your writing and sort of your goals? I know you mentioned your novel, for example, but yeah, what is your outlook now that you've kind of, moved past this, extremely scary sort of period in your life, but you've come out victorious and you've got like a fresh start here. I'm curious, like what's your mindset as far as writing goes?
Yes. So I think a lot of us try to focus on many things, which I was trying to do, but I've come to the conclusion that for now, I would just like to write and publish consistently every week. And I would like to keep improving my craft. And, once I'm settled in this new routine, I would, of course, like to get back to writing my first draft of the
Yeah,
novel.
absolutely.
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
would you be willing to tell us a little bit about your novel? Is it something where you can talk about kind of what the concept is?
Yeah, so I can't really give you the concept as of now, but I can tell you a little bit about how the idea came about and how long I've been sitting on this idea.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, we can do
Yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah. Okay, so this idea came to me. I remember my daughter was only 1 year old, and I remember sitting in this tiny studio apartment that we used to live in. Of course, many years ago. That's about like 10 years ago. And I was just sitting there, and the idea, the girl that I'm writing about just popped into my head. And I was like, it felt like she wanted me to tell her story. And I know this sounds a little woo woo crazy, but that's really honestly how it felt to me. And I actually ended up writing 50,000 words. And then I scrapped it all together because I was like, hey, this is never going to work out. Who's going to publish me? And, like in the beginning, I just said, food blogging is very competitive. And I was just thinking to myself today that fine, I left food blogging, but writing is even more competitive. And I guess I just like challenges. But
Right, right.
so yeah, so with 50,000 words, and I think it's in one of my old laptops, but I probably cannot access it. And it was like, I would call it draft zero. And it was just, this feverish period of writing or during the night when my daughter used to wake up quite a lot.
Mm.
And then I just totally gave up on it. And I was like, this is never going to happen for me. But the thing is, that story just kept coming back to me again and again, again and again. And I was like, there's something there. And at the end of the day, even if it doesn't work out, I could just write it for my own daughter. And that would be the most important thing for me anyway.
Yeah, of course. No, I love how the story keeps coming back. That's how you know that it's something that needs to exist, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I can tell you that it's fantasy because I like to, when I'm writing fiction, I like to do a lot of like whimsical fantasy sort of thing. And I would like to say that it's around the middle grade age, but since, I'm still working on the draft, that could eventually change.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So, once you kind of get into the draft of it, is your plan to are you trying to go sort of like the traditional publishing route, or I've seen people kind of, I'm sure you've seen it too on Substack. People will serialize chapters of an ongoing novel, and then obviously
Yes.
there's self-publishing as well. I'm curious, kind of what's your plan for this book here as it comes together?
Yeah. Yes. So I understand that, and I get that there's so many ways to publish now, and that's like amazing. But for me, like, it's always been a dream since I was 8 years old to be traditionally published.
Right.
So that's the first thing I would try. And if it works out, it works out, and that would be amazing. But then I could probably look into self-publishing if it doesn't work out. I haven't really thought about serializing my, novel on Substack, but who knows? Like, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm in a similar position where I've been working on a novel off and on again for it's probably been almost 10 years now. And
Wow.
yeah, and I'm the same as you. When I was very young, I decided that I wanted to be a published author and I wanted to be traditionally published. So I'm still
Yeah.
I'm still hoping for that if I can ever finish this thing.
Yeah.
But it's like you said, you know what I mean? Life gets in the way. We have other things come up. But it's also super important, and I'm sure you would agree, it's super important to kind of build an audience, and to have a platform the way that you
Yes.
do on Substack, because that's what a
Yes.
lot of publishers are looking for these days. It's
Yes,
my
yes.
understanding.
Yeah, I think so. I actually have been looking into that. Not that I'm at the stage of querying or like, looking into publishers, but of course I spend a lot of time on all these author platforms, and I've seen that there seems to be two groups. That some of them say that if you're a fiction writer, you actually don't need a platform, and only nonfictioners, only like publishers are only looking for, writers who are into nonfiction and who basically write nonfiction, and they should have a platform, and the fiction authors should not necessarily have it. But from the way I see it, the way the internet is evolving and the way the publishing industry is evolving, it doesn't hurt to have like a platform. This is also one of the reasons why I started my Substack, because it's always good to show whoever you're publishing with, if you get that chance, that you already have an established readership.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of how I feel as well. And so speaking of kind of having a platform and an audience, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about is you're very active as far as notes go on Substack. And what I love about your notes specifically, and this is kind of something where I think this was the first time I met you, you always post very just kind of thoughtful, supportive, very insightful type stuff. It feels genuine, which I think is really fantastic. And you don't see that often on social media. So my question for you is, when you're looking to kind of post a note, or you're looking to kind of engage with the community, what are some kind of tips or advice that you would offer to people who are trying to, forge those connections? Because it is hard, right? Like,
Yeah.
entering a community like that, but you're one of the people that I think of when I think of someone who's very good at kind of creating that sense of community. And I'm curious how you approach it.
Yeah. So, to be very, very honest, my notes are really spontaneous. I
Yeah.
actually don't put any thought into it. I don't put any strategy into it. So I'll be scrolling through the Substack notes feed because I just like reading notes. And it's just a fun thing to do when you're procrastinating on your real writing. So, and I'll just read something, and some random thought will pop into my head, and I'll just try to like create an impromptu note, and I'll just post it. So I do post a lot on notes. I'm very, very active. So some of them do really well, some of them don't do well at all. But what I've noticed is that people really, really resonate with relatability.
Mm.
So part of that is like to achieve that is you have to be very authentic. And I bring my food blogging back into this again because I did it for 10 years. And I
Mm.
feel like a lot of it was, just very fake and very made up. And you had to show up a certain way and you had to show that you're successful in order to get success. And I feel like that about almost all of social media. And so
Hmm.
far for me on Substack, I've seen that people are really resonating with what seems to be very authentic and raw. So whatever I write, it's usually not even perfect. I mean, if I look at the grammar or like, and they're really random thoughts, but whatever note that has gone successful or like viral, if you would say, it would be the one where I've been the most honest or the most authentic or vulnerable. So that's at least my take on the notes feed. And I feel like I see a lot of notes where people are trying really hard to be something that they're not.
Mm.
And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But for me, I can no longer. I was never really fake on social media anyway, but I just cannot do that anymore. Like I have to be who I am, and if people accept me for that, that's amazing. And if they don't, that's also okay.
Yeah, I think that's excellent advice, and my personal approach to notes is the same way. It's like I'm not trying to have a strategy or to have like things
Yeah,
pre-written, you know, or whatever. It's very much just me, right? And
yeah.
I think that's fantastic advice. Which brings me to
Thank you.
brings me to my next question. Over the course of your journey this year specifically, you've posted a few times about how supportive the community has been regarding your journey through fighting cancer. And so I was curious, how has the community shown up for you? And is it something where, I feel like Substack's community is very unique in the sense that it really is authentic and real. So I'm curious,
Yes, yes.
is that also how you feel kind of after going through this journey?
Yes, absolutely. I feel like this is the only community where I've had, notes and my posts. Well, my posts have also gotten good response, but I'm talking about notes right now. And
Hmm.
I've had several notes go really, really viral. So we're talking in the thousands, like 11,000, 30,000. And one thing I've noticed is that I've never actually received any mean comment. So very, very rarely, I would say, somebody will, and even then, it's not like a super mean comment like you see on other social media platforms.
Right.
So Substack is honestly really unique in that way, and that's why I love it so much. And I have to say this that I started this whole year has been a big roller coaster ride for me, and I started on a very big high when my Substack got a lot of engagement in the initial first few weeks, and then I got to the lowest of my life. Like I was diagnosed with cancer, and I at that there was this point where I was like, why did I even get so much engagement, and what was the point? And I was all like, this is it, and my life is over. Like it was one of the lowest periods of my life,
Yeah.
and I was like, I kept saying to myself, there's no point of this, and I actually stopped writing for a few weeks. And when I did open up eventually on Substack, the response that I received, the love, the encouragement, the wishes, the kindness, it was just amazing. And I remember even writing about a note about this very thing that, uh, honestly feel like this community was given to me by the universe or however, life works
Yeah.
so that so that they could help me through this of my life. I honestly feel that way
Yeah.
because when I started my Substack, it was all about like, I need readers, I need fame, I need recognition. But the way this community has turned out to be for me during, once you get something like cancer, you really don't care about numbers.
Hmm.
And the way this has to be the most meaningful community and, love that I've received from Substack.
That's incredible. Yeah, I think when I joined Substack, my goal at the very beginning was just exactly like you said. It was like I want to get an audience, I want people to read my stuff, but then it's like once you're here and you experience these like real authentic connections and this sense of community, it really does kind of shift your perspective. And obviously for you, like you said, you know, when something like your cancer diagnosis happens to you, it really makes you rethink everything. You know, it kind of like
Yeah.
restarts your whole perspective.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and and so now it's like, yeah, and then of course, as you've seen, being authentic, being real, and showing up as yourself like that, it's as successful, if not more successful, than the others who are just chasing numbers. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes. I
Um,
agree. I agree.
and I think that's an incredible, that's an incredible aspect of this community, and it makes me so happy that people showed up to support you like that, because
Yes. Yes.
yeah, because it's something like that happens to you, and it makes sense that you would stop writing. You know what I mean? Like other things take precedent. You have to like kind of rethink your priorities and so on and so forth. But it's like the idea that you would stop writing forever is really scary. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I would be very, very sad if I never saw another post from you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's so sweet of you. Yeah, but for a while there, I really did think that this is it, and maybe it just wasn't meant to be.
Yeah.
And my entire family was saying to me that you need to keep writing, because writing is very therapeutic as well. And I remember my sister, she's actually 10 years older than me, and she flew all the way from Canada to be with me during my
Mm.
surgery.
Mm.
And she was very encouraging, and she said, you must keep writing. And I kept saying to her, what's the point of all this and everything? But I remember that she, after my surgery, she took me to the mall, and there's this cute little stationery shop in that mall. And she got me all, this a lot of cute little journals and post-its and cute stationery stuff. And she was like, you know what? You're gonna write down everything that's happened so far. And it wasn't even like, I was actually writing full essays or anything. It was like she just made me write every event that happened. So my first doctor visit and my surgery and all the little things, like when I had my MRI, when I had my PET CT scan, she made me write it down. It was like a daily planner sort of thing. And
Mm.
just doing that. And I was like, no, I don't want to do this. This is like pointless. And she was like, no, you just have to do it. And she made me sit with her, and she was like, you have to do it. So she made me do it. And honestly, it wasn't even creative writing, to be honest. And it was like a weight fell off of my shoulders. And I felt like I had put those words on paper, and they no longer belonged to me. And I felt lighter. I felt like, I was just going to be okay. So I think at that point, you're so disappointed and so discouraged, and you're sort of like, this is never going to work out for me, and who knows if it even really matters or not at the end of the day. But to come through that and to be able to start writing again, I think that's something very, very special to me, and I'm just so happy that I came back to it.
Yeah, of course. I absolutely love that story you told as well. It's like you said, writing can be very therapeutic, and specifically what you said about the weight that came off your shoulders when you put those words on paper. It was like they no longer belonged to you. That was incredible.
Yeah, yeah,
I can picture that, and I can understand that on a deep level. I definitely
yeah,
understand how that helped. Yeah.
yeah.
That's amazing. And the encouragement too. My goodness, that's just amazing that you have such a supportive family. I love that.
Yeah, yeah, they were just the best. I threw a lot of tantrums, and I went into a lot of depressive modes, and I would just stay in my bed, and they really pulled me out of it. They were like, "Hey, you know what? We're not gonna let you give up. You're going to do this, and you're absolutely going to show up for everything, and you're gonna get out of that." So that was amazing. Yeah, and actually, my dad is also a cancer survivor, so
Oh
he
wow.
was the biggest support ever. And I'll always be grateful to him. And I think he really, like, both my parents, they really showed me what unconditional love is.
Absolutely. Gosh, that's amazing. I love to hear it.
Yeah, thank
All
you.
right. Well, I have one last question for you here. So you're coming up on about a year now, right? That you've been on Substack, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, and on January 3rd it will be 1 year, I think.
Oh, interesting. I
Yeah,
know I started in
yeah,
January too. We might have started around the same
yeah,
day. That's crazy.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's amazing.
So then, yeah, as we're coming up to your first year on Substack here, I guess my last question, and I kind of ask this to everyone who comes on the show here, is What advice would you give to a writer who's looking to just start out? Maybe they're listening to the podcast here and they're like, I'm interested in Substack, but I don't really know kind of where to start. So after being here for a year and learning everything you have, what's some advice that you would give to kind of a brand new writer?
Yeah. So I think I'm going to start with something which is a big cliche, but I think everyone should start before they feel ready, because for the longest time, I never did that because I always kept making excuses that, I'll do it when the time is perfect and when I feel absolutely ready, but you're never going to feel ready. So that's part one of my advice. But I also want to say a couple of other things. So I feel like right now in this age of AI and so much social media hype and everything, the only way to really stand out now, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, is to be really authentic and as unique as you can be. Because, and not unique in the sense you just go out of the box or something, but unique in the way you are. Because no one can be like you, no one can show up like you, no one can write like you, and that's what's going to make you stand out. And I also feel like there's like a lot of focus on numbers and followers and subscribers, but there's never really much, said about actually improving your craft, improving your writing. So part of the reason why I started my Substack was to also have a consistent writing habit and start, working on it and improving it and making it as best as possible as I can. So I feel like personally, you should strive for excellence in whatever craft you're trying to hone.
Absolutely. I think all of that advice is excellent, and I agree with every single point of it. Yes, that's amazing.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Wajiha, thank you so much for coming onto the show here. Like I said, we've known each other, the entire time that I've been on Substack, and this was one of those interviews that I, was really excited to schedule with you to learn about you and your journey. And I just want to say again that I'm so happy that you've come out of this victorious, that you've got this great perspective on the future. And, as always, I'm going to be here rooting for you and just wishing you the best. And honestly, I can't wait until we hear more news about that novel of yours as well.
Thank you so much for having me, Bradley. I really, really enjoyed this interview, and I'm so honored that you thought I would be worthy of it. And I've always, you already know I'm such a big fan of yours, and I love your writing and all the things you do for the community. So thank you so much.
Of course. You're very welcome. Thanks again for coming on the show. Thank you again to Wajiha for the amazing interview and for working with me despite our 8-hour time difference between our time zones. Several guests on here have actually made themselves available despite major time differences where we live, and it always means the world to me, so I really appreciate it. All right, next up, we'll look at next week on Substack. So next week on Substack here, it feels like things are kind of getting back to normal. It's also that time of year, though, where seasonal depression kicks in, daylight savings ensures that it's dark at 5 p.m. where I live, and all kinds of other fun changes. The point is, it's understandable if you need to take a break or slow down in this time of year. The Saved as Draft podcast will still be here every Friday to keep you company if you decide to join me and my cast of eclectic voices. So this coming week, I've got another Power Up prompt coming tomorrow on Saturday. And I'll also post our Monday Meet and Mingle thread in my subscriber chat so that anyone new can have a chance to introduce themselves. So stay tuned for that. I want to try and do that every Monday without, forgetting every once in a while. And I have, of course, another amazing guest lined up for the show that I will announce this coming Tuesday for next Friday's episode. And speaking of Tuesday, remember, like I said earlier, check my subscriber chat on Tuesdays for that shoutouts post thread where you can drop your links. Something else I want to bring back is our weekly writing discussion on Wednesdays as well. For those unaware of this, I pose a discussion topic and read some of the answers on the podcast. It's a segment that I would like to bring back, and it's always writing related, so if you'd like to discuss or hear other writers' advice on a topic, let me know in the comments of this episode. And again, stay tuned for that starting up again on Wednesday. And one final thing. This is actually a reward to anyone who's listening right now at the end of the episode. I'm planning a new type of prompt that I may launch in next week's podcast episode. Right now, I'm calling them wandering prompts. And the idea is that I'm going to hide one in every episode of this very show. At some point, randomly, in each episode, a phantom signal will interrupt and share a writing prompt. Once it's been shared, the show will resume as normal. Think of it like a special Easter egg for those who are listening closely each week. I'm still figuring out what the reward's going to be for catching and subsequently writing something about this new type of prompt, but again, if you have ideas, if you like this concept, let me know in the comments. Also, shout out to my girlfriend Sarah, aka the Prompt Goddess, for suggesting this wandering prompts concept idea. I'm really excited about it. Stay tuned for more details. And that's it for this week, my friends. Thank you for sticking with me through rain and shine, for always showing up as your authentic selves, and for sharing your writing and your art with me and the world. I appreciate you all so much. Have a productive and safe week, fellow writers. This is Bradley Ramsey, signing off. Bradley Stephen Ramsey! Oh, crap. Finton finished reading Chapter 4 of The Order of the Pawn. Ah! Finton, wait, it's not what it looks like! Not what it looks like? When I find you, I'm going to make the Varrock Horde look like Care Bears by the time I'm finished with you!